Hi there, founders. Welcome back to Founderama, another episode where we discuss startups, founders, and of course, success. All right. So, what do you do when things are not going according to plan? Right. So, in your startup, let's say you're bootstrapping or seed, you've just been seed funded or, whatever. What do you do when things start to look like they are headed in a direction that was not what you originally planned, or maybe deviating from your vision or your purpose or the core values, or even in terms of the business itself? What do you do? Well, you pivot, right? You have to pivot. You have to change. You have to change the direction. You have to change the course. Um, you don't change your core values and you don't change your purpose and vision and mission to match the changing conditions or the changing environment, changing economy, market segment, consumers. No, what you do is you pivot, right? So that's the topic for today: how to master the pivot. The pivot, such an important concept. And a lot of people have a lot of different ideas about pivoting. And in fact, a lot of them, a lot of founders feel that, once you sort of, you are on a course, you should not change course. You should not pivot because that shows a lack of confidence, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's all myths, right? So let's talk about pivoting and how to master it today. Pivoting refers to the strategic process of changing the direction of your startup in response to market conditions, consumer feedback, or new opportunities. So it is a strategic process, right? So it's not just made on a whim, it's not made because of fear, especially fear, right? We spoke about fear last week, and the most important thing about fear is that, especially as for a founder and in a startup, it will lead you down directions and decisions that are going to ultimately hurt you. So you got to remove fear out of the equation. Pivoting should not be made because of fear, and it should be based on scientific, data driven decision making, analysis, critical thinking, of course, seeking advice and all that, and in response to market conditions, customer feedback, or new opportunity. Okay, so let's talk about strategies for effectively implementing a pivot to ensure that your startup succeeds. Now, signs that you may need a pivot. What are the different signs? First is stagnant growth. If your startup's growth has plateaued, it may be time to consider a pivot to reinvigorate your business. Okay, a lot of founders, a lot of startups, they look at stagnant growth, and yes, I know you shouldn't just jump and then pivot your business just because, your growth has plateaued. I'm not saying that. But of all the things that are analyzed, that are put on the table, pivoting is not one of them. And I've seen this, I've coached, I've mentored, tons and tons of founders. And when we are analyzing the problem and we look at stagnant growth, and the first thing that I observe is, yeah, it's not even on their radar, right? They don't even think, it doesn't even register. It's only after we discuss about it that they say, oh, okay. So I'm not saying this should be the first call of action when you see stagnant growth, because stagnant growth could be because of marketing issues. It could be because of product issues and so on and so forth, right? But pivoting could be one of the solutions. Unmet customer needs. If your product or service isn't resonating with customers, pivoting to better address their needs can help you regain traction. Okay, so this is fundamental to SaaS businesses, but also regular businesses, right? If it's plateauing and your user growth is stagnating, and in fact, you're having churn, then you got to pivot in terms of your features, maybe even the product itself. So there are many different kinds of pivots. At the one extreme end is pivoting the business itself completely, the market segment, the business model, the consumers, everything pivoting the whole thing, right? That's very rare, and that's not what we are talking about here. We're talking about the middle path, pivoting, making small changes, pivot, right? In the true sense, it's kaizen, small changes that to improve the conditions. And then, of course, on the opposite end is no pivot, right? It's set in stone. Everything is set in stone. It's rigid. It's pig-headed. Yeah, that's dangerous too. Market changes. Adapting to shifts in the market, including new competitors or emerging trends, may require a strategic pivot. This could be something as simple as, deciding to go on to TikTok, even though it could be, I don't know, a financial consulting startup or something like that, right? So you're in the finance sector and LinkedIn and Twitter are your primary kind of marketing vehicles. TikTok, you might be like, what? But then if your consumers are responding to that, then so that's a small pivot, right? So that's a pivot. But it could also be removing certain features in your product because consumers are no longer interested in that. Or in fact, they look at those features as a negative. Then you got to pivot, change that. Okay. Evaluating your startup situation, right? So first, assess your business model. Examine your startup's value proposition, target market, and revenue streams to determine if a pivot is warranted, right? So, because look, stagnating, if your business is not picking up, it could be because your value proposition, which was so powerful at one time, is not powerful enough. So you may need to pivot the value proposition, right? Pivot, yeah, friends. Because look, insanity is defined as doing the same thing and expecting results each time you do it, right? That's insanity. And therefore, if your value proposition has lost its edge, it's not relevant anymore, it's not resonating with your audience, then yes, target market. Are you targeting a segment of the market that were at one time cash cows, but that market segment has actually changed because their psyche has changed, their worldview has changed, the psychographics has changed? You got to pivot. You got to change the target market. So on. Gather feedback, solicit input from customers, team members, and advisors to gain insight into potential areas for improvement. So you don't do pivoting in isolation. You don't do it on a whim. You don't do it by yourself. Of course, if you're a solopreneur, you do it by yourself. But even for solopreneurs, it would be worth whatever time, effort, and money you spend in seeking guidance, external guidance. Talk to a consultant, talk to an advisor, talk to a mentor, right? But solicit some input. Talk to your customers. Say, how do you feel? When you joined us like last year, how are you feeling? How are you feeling about our product now, about our service? Are you having the same kind of course, pick customers that are, your top customers. Are you feeling the same as you did last year? What could be improved? What do you hate about this, right? Okay, team members, absolutely. If you got a team, they probably have a few different ideas and they're just keeping their mouth shut because, they're thinking, oh, change. But remember, we spoke about this in one of my previous videos. We were talking about how you need to foster a culture of openness with team members so that you're getting valuable feedback and insights. Analyze your competition. Understand your competitors' strengths and weaknesses to identify opportunities for differentiation. That is critical. I'm not saying that you need to react for every little thing that your competitor does or copy them. No. You need to be aware of that. You need to be analyzing it so that if need be, you have data to support your pivoting. Okay, so what are the strategies for implementing a successful pivot? You start by defining your new direction for anything, right? So identify new opportunities, explore alternative markets, consumer segments, or even product offerings that align with your startup's core competencies. So let's say you have a SaaS product and it's been serving a segment of the population that needed to solve a particular problem. But let's say that problem is maybe diminished or it's going away. Time to pivot. So you got to look at that, but then you also have to look at core competencies. Just because, so let's say your core competencies have been, I don't know, providing email support. Now, because of AI and all the different startups that are coming up, email support is now being automated, which means your core competency of 5 years, 10 years experience of providing email support may become a little irrelevant, right? So what do you do then? You got to look at, okay, email support, it's the human factor, so on and so forth. You need to go back to your essence and then reformulate that and pivot using your value proposition and so on and so forth. Develop a clear value proposition. Articulate the unique benefits of your startup will deliver in its new direction. So again, you got to start from the beginning. You don't change your core values, you don't change your purpose, your vision, mission, and all those things. But that's why in one of my previous videos, and I will do more in the future, I talk a lot about when you're coming up with the essence of your brand, don't tie it, don't couple it to your current product or current service, because they may change. You may need to pivot, and you don't wanna be a company that stands for something every few months, stands for something different, right? Okay. Set measurable goals. I always say this. Establish concrete objectives and key performance indicators, KPIs, to track your progress after the pivot. So you got to do a before and after. Now, I know this third point is after. So by that time, you've already pivoted. And then, if you don't do it properly, then yeah. But always, and you can do it in bite-sized pieces too. Communicate your pivot, right? So engage your team. Involve your team members in the decision-making process and ensure they understand the rationale behind the pivot. Because look, you may believe that pivot needs to happen, and you may think that if I tell the team members ahead of making a decision, then they may actually change my mind. Well, let them. You got to be a strong leader. You got to be a strong founder. Let them take their best shot at shooting down your proposition of this pivot. Because, hey, the harder they try, the better informed you are. And you know what? Maybe it is the wrong move, right? Okay, so foster that culture. Update stakeholders. So inform investors, advisors, and other stakeholders about your new direction and how it will benefit your startup. Ideally, before you implement it, you need to update your stakeholders, get their input, get their feedback, especially if you have stakeholders, investors. Because look, if you try to do something behind the backs of your investors, and if the investors feel that this kind of pivot is going to hurt their bottom line, you're gonna have a lot of trouble. So be upfront, be transparent, don't be afraid. Rebrand if necessary. So revise your startup's branding, messaging, and marketing materials to reflect your new focus. So suppose, and this is if it's a major pivot, but also for product-based pivots, you need to tweak the messaging, you need to change the messaging, right? So rebranding is a very important part, and I will do a video on that, a complete video on rebranding. Okay, then execute and iterate, right? So develop a detailed action plan. Outline the steps required to execute your pivot, including any necessary research, product development, or market testing. Market testing is very important. You want to do a proof of concept. You want to make sure that this pivot is the right thing to do. Now, how do you do that? You start by sort of doing a little bit of market research. Then you're reaching out to stakeholders. You're reaching out to customers. You're using input from the team. You may be reaching out to advisors, to mentors. You take all that and then you create a detailed plan. Measure and adjust. As you pivot, monitor your progress against your established goals and also where you were before the pivot, right? So, and it's all about tweaking. It's all about adjustments. It's all about that, the fine tuning of strategies, and then learn from the process, right? So embrace the lessons learned during the pivot and use that knowledge to inform future decision making. So look, not all pivots will go smoothly. Even the smallest of pivots, you may have a little bit of trouble. In fact, you will have trouble. In fact, expect that it's going to go wrong, right? And so when it goes wrong, don't be afraid and don't have regrets and then beat yourself up. I shouldn't have done it. Oh my God, my advisor was telling me not to do it, or that team member said don't do it, or my spouse said don't do it. Don't have that kind of thinking. Banish that kind of thinking. No regrets. And you can banish that kind of thinking if you are prepared properly before making the pivot. But it's okay. Once you make the pivot, with the true heart and true intentions, true effort, right? True frame of mind. And if something goes wrong, that's okay, right? Deal with it. Deal with it and don't be stressed. Look at it in that moment, okay? Not the eventuality. If you think that things are looking like it's going to end in disaster in 6 months down the line, 6 months down the line, the future doesn't exist, right? You can do something about it in this moment that will prevent whatever you're thinking might happen, right? Yeah. Then let's just reiterate the benefits of mastering the pivot, right? So increased adaptability. Learning to pivot effectively can make your startup more resilient and adaptable in the face of uncertainty. And learning to pivot and mastering it is an art. You got to educate yourself. A lot of founders, 80% of the founders, don't know how to make changes, how to pivot, how to fine tune. No, it's like they're pretty good at going full on, but not making those small navigation changes, right? Corrections. Enhanced customer satisfaction. By addressing unmet needs or capitalizing on new opportunities, a successful pivot can lead to greater customer satisfaction and loyalty. Improve long-term prospects, right? So yeah, this is going to be great for your growth, especially if you're stagnating. And I can tell you, 99% of businesses stagnate. It's the 1% that always have, increasing growth. But yeah, you may see growth. I'm talking about good growth, right? You may see a small percentage growth over 6 months. That's stagnation in my book. Okay. So once you start seeing progress and it's positive, celebrate your progress, right? Stay vigilant. Continuously monitor your performance and the market landscape, because pivoting can be dangerous. And then share your experience. Encourage fellow founders to be open to pivoting and help them navigate the process by sharing your own experience and insights. Do that on your LinkedIn, or if you're a member of Founderama, if you haven't already joined Founderama, the doors are opening pretty soon. Join it. There's a waiting list. And then share your experience. Share with other founders how your pivot is going. Share. Come on, don't hold back. It's not, look, just by sharing, it's not that other founders will become successful, wildly successful. They will leave you in the dust. No, you will succeed as you will. They will succeed as they will. And by sharing and by being transparent, in fact, you gain friends, you gain clout, you gain authority, right? So come to Founderama and share. So that is about pivoting. And like Founderama, I'm just getting started with Founderama. I'm going to be launching pretty soon. And guess what? If I need to pivot, I will pivot, right? I will talk about it when the time comes. But the community network is ready. All the spaces have been created and all that. I'm just putting my thoughts together. I'm going to invite a small group of people that I know on LinkedIn and Twitter, founders who I would request to come and test, right, for a little bit and see how things are. Maybe I need to tweak a few things and pivot, and then I'll open it to the public. All right. So I hope you found this video useful. Let me know if you're in the middle of a pivot. Share your story, leave a comment below, or DM me on LinkedIn or Twitter. And then, maybe I missed something, but there are a few things that I should have added. Let me know in the comments. All right. I'll see you in the next video tomorrow. Till then, go forth and prosper.